Every guitar deserves a perfect neck, so stick around because today we're going to give carving one a go. Hey, welcome back to the channel. This is episode 6 of me building a custom Les Paul for myself. I've wanted a high-spec Les Paul for the longest time, and it turns out it's taking the longest time to build too, but everybody seems to be enjoying watching along for the journey, and this is really only the second guitar I've ever made, so it is going to take me longer to figure stuff out and explain stuff as I'm going. There are 5 episodes before this. If you haven't seen them, I'll put the thumbnails on screen now. And before we kick off, I just want to say to everybody who came along since the last video and subscribed, thank you so much. It's great to have you on board for the channel and this journey of this guitar being built. And thanks to everybody who's been here since day 1 too. You guys really keep me motivated to get back in here to the workshop where it is absolutely freezing cold in the winter and continue building. So let's kick off. In the last video, we really got quite a lot done, all really focusing on the neck. That was going to be the first part of building the neck, and then this video is intended to be the second part of building the neck. I'm really hoping there won't be a third, but we'll see how we get on. Separating the neck out just for a few seconds here because we just need to talk about that again. What we accomplished in the last video wasn't bad. We got the fingerboard glued on and radiused and all the slots cut into it. We got the truss rod installed. We took the headstock down at the front and we tapered that up into the neck and attached the flamed maple veneer. And then on the rear, as you can see here as well, we put in a reverse cut and we blended that up so it's going to be the start of a volute. In this video, what I want to do is pick up where we left off. The first thing I really want to do is get some sort of side markers or dots into this neck. Now, I'm not the type of person that likes dots on the front. I don't really think any musician uses them when they're gigging. They always look at the side ones. The ones at the front are, in my opinion, there when you're learning the instrument. Sometimes it's nice to have your logo on the 12th fret, so maybe I'll do something like that someday. Or if you're building one for somebody, to put something nice there as a personal gesture for them. But for me, side dots are all I want. There's all sorts of options for side dots. There's black and white and glow in the dark and every color you can think of and pretty much every material you can think of too. However, what I want to use is very straightforward. All of the hardware on this guitar is going to be silver or chrome, depending on your perspective. The tuners, the bridge, the pickups. So I want these side dots to be something similar. And I picked up these little 2mm aluminium bars on Amazon, and I got a packet of 10 of them for, I think, about €5, and that's enough to do loads of guitars. I might only ever use one of these in the build today. So that's the plan. I'm going to drill some 2mm holes in the side of the neck, glue this in, trim them, and then just rasp them back so they're flush with the side of the fingerboard. So let's get started on that, and it should be a relatively quick job to do. Because there's a lot of messing about just getting distances right and stuff like that and setting up things like this square, I did some of the marking off camera, and all I did was set this height on the combination square, offered it up to the back of the neck, which is still square, and then I drew in a center line down the side of the fingerboard, which is very narrow at the moment. It's only about 5mm at the edge. So just drew that in, and that gave us our midway point. And then I took a very small steel ruler, measured between the 2 frets, half that, and then just put a vertical mark in to denote where I need to drill down so that I can get these side markers in. I did a test one off camera. It did not go well. I was a little bit out by about 0.5 millimeter, so I filled that back in with some ebony sawdust and super glue, and you can't even see where it was now. And I did a second test, and that worked fine. So now I have a process where I can continue the rest of these. It's very straightforward. We just take a brad pointed drill bit, which is very sharp, to give us a center registration point. And then we take our smaller drill bit, which I've chalked into the drill here, go down 1 millimeter or 2, pop in some very thin super glue, put in the aluminium bar, use some activator spray to lock the super glue in quickly, and then just give it a little snip. So we're going to do that for the rest of them. I'll do 1 or 2 on camera, and then we'll just cut to them all being done then, because you don't need to see me doing Ooh, loads of these. They'll all be fine. We'll get a look at them in a minute. Now, just a tiny drop of super glue. And the thin stuff works well here because it wicks all around the hole. If you've thick super glue and you put in your rod and you're hoping that the glue will wick around it, it's going to take a bit of time. This stuff is much, much better. So just pop it down into the little recess created by the drill bit. Make sure it's seated and centered. And that pushes a bit of the glue out as well that you can see probably on screen. Can you see it on screen? Yeah, you can. And that just tells you that it's a really tight fit. And this is activator spray. So just a tiny little squirt of that. And within about 5 to 10 seconds or thereabouts, you'll see that squeezed out glue starting to go from clear to kind of like an opaque, milky white color. And at that stage, you know that you're ready to trim it. So I just trim it with a standard side cutters. And there we go. I'm going to take a little blue rag here now and just clean up some of the accelerator that has spilled over. It's not the end of the world anyway. It's not going to block any finish from going on. And then later we'll take a file and we'll file off that sharp edge just to get it a little bit more close to the edge of the fingerboard. We're going to have to file the edges anyway when we fit the frets, but just now, so that we don't end up with any cuts or anything like that, it's good to get those cut out and filed relatively flat anyway. So we'll do that closer to the end when the rest of them are in. I've done the 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, 12th and 15th frets now. So I just have the 17th, 19th, 21st, and then 2 dots on the 24th as well. And that'll be all of the side dots in. So it's really that easy. The only thing I would say is that all of this messing about with measuring and white lines and having to get the drill right into the center, if you're doing this on a repeated basis, it's probably good to create some sort of a jig. So I might look at either 3D printing something or just making something a little bit more robust out of wood that I can get the positioning right each and every time. The side dots are in and they look so damn good. I'm really glad I went for aluminium. I'll put a picture on the screen of these. Now, are they perfect? I think they're all within kind of about 1/4 of a millimeter of each other. Most of them are perfect, and there's just one that I think is a tiny bit deviated. So I am going to make a jig for this to do it the next time, or just come up with a better way of doing it. That's an option too. But I'm really happy. They look great. Now, the next thing we need to do is start getting rid of the bulk of this material here at the back of the neck so we can do a carve. And of course we need to figure out where the neck stops and the body begins, and that's really, really easy. We just put the neck back into the body. I'm not going to be bolting this down or anything at this point in time. We're going to flip it over. There we go. And it's just a case of putting a pencil line in here at the heel. And I'm just going to make sure I actually have a bit of lead extended in the pencil, because I've done that a couple of times. Oh yeah, that's great. Oh, do you know it's a tight neck pocket when you can't get it back out again? Okay, that's good. We have a perfect line now of where the body is about to begin. So that gives us some reference points that we need as always. Now, I know where my first fret is going to be. I know where my heel is. I'm going to remove material a little bit away from the heel. I'm going to say about 2.5 centimeters away to give me the space to transition that up into the heel itself. And I'm going to start aiming for this volute here, roughly around the, I'm going to say the middle of the first fret, thereabouts. So the idea is I want to come down to the right depth here, cut out all the material in the center and get it perfectly flat, and then we can begin to consider what we're doing for carving in terms of the neck profile itself. I'm going to go with a modern C-shaped neck. It's what I did on my Telecaster, and anybody who's played the Telecaster has kind of stepped away from it thinking, that's probably one of the nicest necks I've played. No, that was entirely a fluke. It was completely by accident. And how I arrived at it was by following a friend of mine's YouTube channel, Gio from Tornelli Guitars. He's done a video on carving the neck profile, which I'm going to put in the description of this video down below. There'll be a link to it. And I'll talk through how I'm going to do it on this video too, in case you just want to keep watching this one and follow what I'm doing. But essentially, we're going to use the facet method to carve the neck, and I'll explain what facets are in a little bit. So right now, the first thing I want to do is get the end and here down to the right depth. Now, what's the right depth? This is very personal depending on what you want out of a neck. I like the necks to be that balance between being thin and fast, but completely avoiding what Fender and Gibson do, where it's like a baseball bat and it's completely uncomfortable to hold after a while and doesn't lend well to ergonomics of your hand and your wrist. So I'm going to bring the first fret position thickness down to, I think, about 21 millimeters, and that's including the fingerboard. And then on this side, I'm going to bring it down to about 1.5 millimeters more, so somewhere around about 22, I want to say. Now, the really cool thing about having your fingerboard extended, which is why a lot of luthiers do this, is you can take your calipers and you can measure the back of your fingerboard at the apex, at the highest part, and you'll see how thick it is. So mine, after all of the sanding and radiusing and everything else, is about 6 millimeters. So I need about 14 millimeters of wood left here, and I need about 16 millimeters of wood left here. The 14 here is going to be just about right, because remember there's a hole in there for the truss rod channel. That's about 11 meters deep, 11 millimeters deep. So I'm giving myself 3 or 4 millimeters of very hard maple behind that, just to have something in there to support the truss rod. The volute will also do a lot of the heavy lifting there. That's going to be more wood, again, above that critical part where most of the wood is removed for the truss rod. So I'm not too worried about that structurally. And then at the heel, we've loads. So yeah, let's get marking and let's get carving. You can see this is the heel of the neck here because the bolts are in the back. And I've drawn this line. Well, this is the line we drew when it was in the body, this curve. And then I just squared this off on both sides so I could have a reference line against the back of the neck here, which we know is square. There's no point in referencing the top here because the fingerboard is round, and that's going to give us some false measurements. As much as we want our sanding to be accurate and using things like the router jig to put in a radius, they're never going to be 100% accurate. This will be, so we'll reference off the rear of it. Once I had this line where it meets the body, the next thing to figure out is how you want that curve to go into the fingerboard. Now, we said earlier we want the base of the neck here to be 22 millimeters, and we knew our fingerboard was about 6 millimeters, so 6 away from 22 is about 16, I think. So I just measured from the base of the fingerboard to here, which was 16 millimeters, and well, I actually measured it here and I popped in a line. And at the other end, up at the fingerboard, I did the same thing, except I made it 2 millimeters shorter, and I drew in a mark there, and then I drew this line here, which tapers from the 22 up to the other one at 20. You'll see the 21 in a second, and it'll make much more sense, I promise. But that gives us the material we want to leave, and we need to figure out roughly what kind of an angle we want to go up. Now, all I did here, this is so arbitrary, it's so made up on the spot, and really, you know, you can do your own version of this. There is no science. It's just down to what you feel will work. I grabbed a cap off a bottle and I put it here and I drew a line around it. And I did exactly the same on the other side because I referenced that line around and I had that measurement on the other side. So I just flipped the two of them and I drew that line on the other side as well. So what's this about here? Why have I blocked out this area all the way through? That's where I'm going to make my cut down to try and remove as much material as possible before we flatten out the rest of the neck. So I need one guaranteed point here that's going to be 22 millimeters, and we need one at the other end as well. Why are we using 22 millimeters? Well, we're going to be using this. This is an Iwasaki half round, very fine file or rasp. And this is what we're going to use to go down. It's 22 millimeters. And I do like the fact that it has a little curve, because that'll help us get our curve started up to here on the other side when we're finished. But it's just a beautiful piece of hardware. I have a few of these, and I think they're the finest files you can buy for your money. And if you're thinking of getting into any type of woodworking, I really recommend these. The ridges on it are all hand struck by the craftsman who made it. And the wonderful thing about them is the finish they leave, it's almost like the wood has been sanded. It's that good. So we're going to use that, which is 22 millimeters wide, just here at the top. And we're going to go down 22 millimeters down into our piece. Now, let's have a look at the other side up by the fingerboard, because there's a little bit more going on up there. The nut is a little bit more complicated, because when we put the neck into the body, we have the luxury where the heel was of drawing a line around and getting a reference point to start from, a defined set of coordinates. We don't have that here, but we can make our own coordinates, and it's pretty easy to do it. So that bottle cap that I used here to put in the curve for the heel, I used it up here at the neck as well, just for putting in the volute. You can see this curve here. And all I've done with that curve pretty much is just reverse the flow of the headstock. So it's going to come in at this nice curved angle here, swoop around, come around again, and go up here. I think that's going to look really good when it's carved. It's very similar to the first guitar I made, but we're going to make the volute a little thicker. Now that we know where the volute is going to stop, of course, we have our first measurement. So I drew a line perpendicular to that, and I carried it around to the side of the neck as well. Now, we decided earlier that the neck is going to be at around the first fret, 20 millimeters in thickness. So all we did is, very like the heel, we took 20 millimeters, subtracted the 6 millimeters for the fingerboard, which left us with 14 millimeters of actual maple that we need to leave. So I drew a line down about 14, maybe 14 and a half millimeters. I think I was being a little bit extra cautious, put a little mark in, and then carry that horizontal line all the way down until it meets the one we spoke about earlier here at the heel. So that lets us see that taper, thin at the nut, a little bit fatter at the heel, that we're going to keep. And again, just like the heel, we put in a 22 millimeter line in for the half wound Iwasaki rasp that we're going to use to take all of this away. So that's pretty much our measurements done. My two jobs now are going to be to get down to 22 millimeters here and to get down to 20 millimeters here. I'm going to do a little bit of sawing and try and chisel out some of this wood if I can. Or if I'm feeling up to it, I might just take the rasp and just rasp the whole thing out. Either way, I'm going to go and get a coffee now and come back to you in a minute, because I need some coffee. All right, well, that's done, and we've pretty much come to the line up around the first fret and what looks like the 15th fret before it transitions to the heel. And it was a complete and utter pain in the ass, because as I was coming down with the Iwasaki rasp, I got to a point where it stopped removing wood and I couldn't figure it out. And I took the rasp out and I was like, is it dirty? Do I need to clean it? And I took it over to a piece of MDF and it reefed through the MDF in 2 seconds. So I knew this was okay. So then I thought, is there something up with the wood? Is it overheated? Has it filled up with too much compacted sawdust or something? And what it actually was that it had managed to bind itself on the sides and was stopping about 0.5 millimeter away from what I was looking to cut. So I just came down with the chisel on each side here, and it freed up a bit of space and I was able to keep going. So if that happens to you, that's probably what it is. Now, the next job is we're going to hog out this bit here in the middle on the bandsaw. But the problem with it is that the wood is a very light beige color And the pencil marks are actually quite difficult to see. They're going to be even more difficult to see when I'm running the bandsaw itself. So I'm going to put some tape on. I'm not going to put yellow tape because, again, that's going to be hard to see in terms of contrast between the color of the maple and the yellow masking tape. So I'm going to use blue masking tape. I actually bought it specifically for this build because I used yellow in my first build, and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it was just hard to see where it was going. So yeah, I'm just going to stick this on and then we'll go and cut the piece we need to cut out. Already the neck is much lighter, having that big chunk of maple and ebony taken out of it, but the back is quite a rough cut, and actually the bandsaw blade did deviate because I was putting probably a bit too much pressure on it, but thankfully, and I mean this sincerely, it just stopped shy of going beyond where it was supposed to, so I think we got away with it, which is great. The next thing I need to do now is I'm just going to put tape on that line on both sides of the neck so we have something to reference, and we're going to try and carve this and get it flat. So bear with me, that's the next job. We're taped up now and I have it taken down pretty much to the line, which should be perfectly accurate. I like to think it is. The challenge now, of course, is that I need to be able to see both sides while I'm taking this down and making it flat and smooth. And how I'm going to have to do that, because if I stand here and carve, I'm only going to see one side and it will all go wrong. I'm going to have to put it on some sort of a platform to elevate it. Now, guitar makers have really fancy setups for this. You know, I've seen factories where they just have the most amazing jigs. I don't have that yet. I haven't either bought or built it, and I will probably for the next build. But for this, we're going to keep it really simple. We're just going to use a construction 3x2. I'm going to clamp that to the bench. I'm going to put the fingerboard face down, and I'm going to clamp the neck as well. And we have good clamping points here. We have the clamp where the volute is and the clamp where the heel is. And that will allow me to stand here and carve and see how close we're getting to the line and how consistent everything will be when we're done. The neck is pretty much secured where it needs to be at this point, and the fingerboard is protected by some foam underneath that's compressing it. Now, I need to carve this with pretty good accuracy, and to do that you need a large and flat file, a rasp, and what every guitar maker uses pretty much is one of these. This is something called a Shinto rasp, and it's pretty much just like a bunch of hacksaws that are crisscrossed. One side is rougher than the other. So one side, this side here, is meant for removing a lot of material, and then this side is meant for refining it because the teeth are much, much closer together and smaller, but they will leave a rough finish. So the idea here is we're going to get it as close as we can to the line on each side, and then bring down the center until that's actually in the right location too. So I'll start on the far side of the neck away from the camera so you can see what I'm doing. And then I'll stop the camera so I can finish the rest, and then we'll come back and have a look at the finished article. The advantage of using tape here is that when you start getting close to the material, the tape will actually just fold away from the neck itself, so you know you've gotten far enough. And we can also see that we're getting into fresh material here. The bandsaw, when it goes through, leaves some chattering and some staining on the wood because of the heat involved. So using the Shinto rasp, we can see we're exposing new timber here. And the idea is that we should get to new timber the whole way through. And that's my plan. So we'll get a visual feel for when this is done, as well as referencing the two sides. We have witness marks here that we can just get rid of. pretty much it. You can get a little bit obsessed here with wanting to be a human CNC and get everything down to the fraction of the millimeter. I find what really works well is just taking a little square and offering it up. And yeah, I have every now and again the tiniest bit of light showing through. I have a small hump here, and here is perfectly flat. Just here is a problem area, but this is not something I'm worried about because I'm going to be bringing this up here and curving. So it's about 9:30 at night, and I probably need to pack this up for today. I'm going to pick it up tomorrow, but we've gotten so much done today. The side markers are in. The neck is absolutely beautifully taken down to the right thickness now, and it's really smooth. I'm actually surprised myself with how well that turned out. It's really strange because the neck has been this thick all along. I've been handling it and it's been that thick all along. And now to have it this thickness, it almost feels fragile, like I've taken it down too much. I know that's not the case. I know it's right, but it still feels really weird. And I need to get my head around that because it's very, very, very strange. But yeah, I mean, when we put the neck back into the guitar now and we have a look at it, now it's a bit lighter. It's a bit more, I'm going to say, it's a little bit more balanced, which is nice too. But also the end of the neck is in sight. So yeah, I'm going to tidy up in the workshop, put everything away, bring this into the house so it doesn't get too cold. It's going to be a couple of hours for me, but for you guys, it's just going to be a few seconds. See you in the morning. Okay, it's the next day, and it's not the morning, it's late in the evening, it's dark outside yet again. But we've got to pick up from where we left off. Now, yesterday we made this neck a little thinner and we made it square, which is great, but now it needs to be round. And the question a lot of new builders have is, how do I go from something that's, you know, really just a long rectangle into something that's a neck carve? It's really intimidating for new builders. It was very intimidating for me when I built my first guitar. And what I thought was going to be the scariest part of the build turned out to be the most enjoyable part of the build. So I really, really love doing this. How we change it is pretty easy. Everybody has their own version of carving a neck. Some people will carve a round profile at the nut and at the heel, and then they'll use a spoke shave to drag down the curves and make sure they're okay. So I started looking up other methods of doing this. And the one people kept coming back to was something called the facet method. Now, what's a facet? If you look at a diamond where the top of it is not a circle, it's cut into these flat faces, all at angles, that's what a facet is. And that's exactly what we're going to do with this neck. And I'll put a diagram on screen now to kind of explain this a little bit. But we're going to take the rectangular neck and we're going to cut off a corner on each end, the full length. And then that will give us, you know, kind of one facet. And then we'll cut off more on the top and more on the side. And after cutting 3 facets on each side, all we have to do then is literally just put this, like we did yesterday, on that long piece of wood and just run some sandpaper on it. And you've got a neck. The really cool thing about the facet method is that it automatically takes into account that the end is going to be a different size to the start. So up here at the nut, we have a thin rectangle because the nut is shallower and narrower. And at the heel, it's wider and it's taller. So when we use facets, we're going to just use percentages of the neck. We're going to take 50% off one side, 50% off another side, then 33% off one side and 50 off another. And because we're taking proportions of each side, it maintains that growing scale up the neck and gives us that beautiful, beautiful curve. The next thing we need to do, of course, is actually mark where these facets are going to go. And we're doing a modern C-shape profile because it feels perfect when it's done. It really is one of the nicest neck shapes you can ever have. And to do that, we're going to put back in a center line on the neck because that's gone now since we carved everything. And then we're going to take a measurement 50% from the middle of the neck to the edge of the neck. So halfway on each side, left and right. and draw in a line there. And that's our facet at the top. And then at the side, we're going to do exactly the same. 50% between the top of the maple and the end of the maple. We're not including the fingerboard in that measurement at the side. I want to make that really clear because it was unclear to me when I was doing my first neck and I had to call in some tech support from my friends. So it's only the neck material that we're going to be faceting. So 50% here, 50% here, and that will be our first facet drawn in, ready for carving. So I put back in the center line here in the middle of the neck, which is great. It's there now, and we can use that as a reference point. And then I measured 50% from the edge of the neck to that center line, which gives me this line here that tapers the whole way up along towards the nut. And I did the same on the other side. So that gives us our taper points that we can carve to. And then the side of the neck is very straightforward. It's just a 50% measurement between where the fingerboard ends and where the neck ends. So just a line running the whole way down. Quite difficult to see it, of course. And that's where the blue tape from yesterday comes into the equation again. So the blue being a good contrast to the yellowness of the wood. We're going to tape that down, put it back on that 3x2 that I have, clamp it and get it ready for carving. Back on this sort of half-assed jig I've made, and we're ready to carve. Now you can see the blue lines really do make a huge difference in terms of contrast of the wood you need to leave and the wood you need to carve away. So for me, that's a really good visual aid. So yeah, I'm going to get carving this. I'll try and adjust the camera a little bit more so you can see what I'm doing, and then we'll get started. Now, I'll be honest, this is actually very intimidating when you do it because you're taking what's really nice and straight and everything and you're ripping into it. But once you get into it, it's absolutely fine. I find as well, it makes a big difference to hold the shinto slightly sideways as you're doing this because you're getting more of a consistent cut over a longer distance at the same angle. If you do it this way, you're only getting an inch cut. If you're doing it this way, you're probably getting 2 or 3 on the horizontal, and it's easier to stay stable that way. Already you can see we're starting to approach the facet now, which is great. I just need to get it more consistent here at the back and a little bit more consistent at the front, and then slowly work towards the tape because we don't want to get there too quickly in case we get the angle slightly off. Okay, that's really good now. The only thing left to do now is just give that a little bit of a going over with a sharp utility knife razor. That'll just take any microscopic high points out. And the really cool thing about these, because some people use card scrapers, and card scrapers are fine, but this is quite a small job. And you can buy 100 of these in your local tool shop for about €12. So they work perfectly for jobs like this. Okay. And because they're flat, it's only going to help you to get a flat finish on your facet as well. All right, so that's one facet done. I'm not going to make you watch me do the second one, which is exactly the same for this angle. So I'm going to cut that off camera, and then we'll come back in a minute and we'll set up the next facet, the second one, and then we have a third facet after that. But already this is starting to look like it's taking a little bit of shape, and that's really exciting. I'm really happy how the first facet turned out. Now the second facet is a little bit more nuanced because what we're going to do is we're going to try and take some of this off again and make it a shallower angle. Now to do that, we're actually going to cut into the facet we've just cut. And this is the first of 2 facets we're going to cut into the facet we cut. So that's why it's important that we got that as straight as we could. Doesn't need to be perfect, remember, just needs to be close. We're not trying for that elusive human CNC that I spoke about yesterday. So for this one, it's a little bit different. Let me just unclamp the neck and take it out for a second. Oh, there we go. This neck keeps getting lighter. It's great. It's going to get heavier when we put the tuners back into it. Oh, and already it feels kind of like a guitar neck. That's really cool. Okay, so we're going to half the side again. So remember we took 50% of the side away when we did the mark here. So we're going to half the side yet again. So really we're only going to end up with like maybe 5 millimeters kind of straight here on the side. And then where the facet is, we're going to basically take about 1/3 of the facet away on the top of it. So 50% here and about 1/3 here. And then we'll just do some carving. So let me mark all of this up off camera and show you again exactly what we're going to try and achieve. But so far it's going pretty well. I can't see any reason why the rest of it won't go this well either. Right, I have marked off what I needed to mark off and taped up what I needed to tape off. And all we've done is on the side, we have halved the side. So it was about 8 millimeters and it's down to 4 now. And then the facet that we cut actually, we're taking, or we're taping up 2/3 of that. So we're leaving 1/3 exposed along the way. And that measurement is dynamic the whole way up the neck. So what I ended up doing was taking my calipers, measuring the facet, dividing it by 3, and then taking a very small steel ruler and just marking off the measurements as we go. And just like the last time, the measurements start off small and they get slightly bigger as we go up. It's really only the difference of maybe, I think, about 1 millimeter from there to there, but it does taper with the neck. So these are going to be quite small facets to cut. They shouldn't take too long, and it's going to be exactly the same as the last time. We'll just pop it up here onto the 3x2 that I have, clamp it down and get carving. I should point out, I'm not going to make you sit through the carving of the facets again because it's rinse and repeat. So I'm going to do the donkey work off camera and I'll show you the finished product in a second, and then we'll set up for the last set of facets and just talk about the measurements for that one. We've got 4 out of 6 facets carved, and already in my hand, I know I said a minute ago it was starting to feel like a guitar neck, but holy moly, it is really starting to feel like a guitar neck now. I'm so impressed with it. 2 last facets to do. And they're very straightforward. They're 50% again. So we're going to take 50% of the diagonal facet that's been left. There's not much of it left, but we're going to do 50% of that. And we're going to come in 50% from the center line that we still have. So that's really just taking this sort of 1 inch wide section that's flat here at the top and putting a very gentle curve into that. Well, we're taped up for the last facets now, which is pretty great. The finish line is in sight for this part of the neck build, and there's not much material to remove at all. I'm going to put a close-up on the screen so you guys can see it. So now we're going to clamp it up one last time for facet carving. All right, well, that's all the facets done. And a little trick, again, you probably know this if you've been making guitars for any length of time or doing any woodworking, but it's good to mark pencil lines on whatever it is you're carving. And when the pencil lines are gone, you know you've gotten as far as you need to go. Now on the ebony, very hard to see a pencil line, so I took the liberty of putting some white colouring pencil on that, and it made all the difference. So yeah, we have a lot of facets. Oh my god, this looks so good. And it's nearly round, which is even better. So let's take a quick look for the last time of carving. We'll just brush off some of the ebony dust because that's constantly getting into the maple. But yeah, I mean, look at that. That's round already. It just needs those very sharp edges doing away with, and we're going to do away with those now with a little bit of hand sanding. But I couldn't be happier with this. Oh, that's a great feeling. Okay, I'll put a close-up of this on screen while I'm continuing to talk. Next step really is just put it back in the clamps, and we'll get some sandpaper and we'll get the hard edges off. So I just took a Stanley blade and took off some of the hard edges there that we were looking at. And now I'm swapping over to just some sheet sandpaper. This is 120 grit. I think that's aggressive enough for what we're looking to do. And we're just going to pull it down over the sides and go for it. And just like I said in the very first video, if you want to figure out if something is smooth or not, if you're right-handed, use your left hand and just feel it without looking at it, and you'll get a much better sense for what the neck is doing at any moment in time. Don't try to dwell in one place either with the sandpaper, because you will, despite it being very, very smooth sandpaper finish, there's a chance you'll end up going into creating a flat spot. So always keep it on the move. If you haven't guessed by the grin on my face, I am so happy with how this turned out. Holy moly, it feels like a guitar neck. I know I keep saying that and I've said it 100 times through this video, but it really does. Now it's rounded and you know, you can start playing shapes on it, and it feels like something I'm really going to look forward to playing with. It's a great feeling to turn a square block of wood into something that is fit for purpose and is going to make what I hope is a great guitar. I'm going to wrap this video here. There's so much more to do to the neck. I kind of knew it would need 3 videos, and I do want to do a third one very shortly. I'm taking some time away from my day job shortly, so I'm hoping to have at least 2 or 3 continuous days here in the workshop to make more progress on this guitar. Next video, we're going to do the heel transition. We're going to carve the volute. We're going to recut the fret slots, because when we rounded the fretboard, the bits in the middle are still deep enough, but the bits at the edge are a little bit too shallow. So we need to recut those. Then we're going to install all the frets, which will be great fun. We'll put the nut in, and we'll put the tuners in, and yeah, maybe even the Entropia Guitars logo on the headstock as well. So the next video will be great fun. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for watching this one. In my last video, I was saying to everybody I really wanted to get to 500 subscribers before the end of 2025, and you guys were amazing. I actually ended up with nearly 650 subscribers at the time of recording this video, and lots of positive feedback, lots of encouragement, lots of people giving me tips and tricks, and luthiers I've never met before reaching out to me and connecting, and it just goes to show what a great community this is, and I'm really grateful that you guys are here with me early in the journey of this channel. So thank you for subscribing. I really appreciate it. But yeah, here we go. It is really starting to look closer and closer to the finish line. I can't wait to get this done. If you're at the Birmingham Guitar Show in February, I'm going to be hanging out there with the guys from Milehouse Studios, Paul Richards, James Yard from Yard Guitars, Daniel from Devil & Sons, Curtis from Goth Rider Creations, Alan Lowe, many other guys, many other builders. So if you're at the Birmingham Guitar Show, you'll see me. I'll be wearing something with the Entropia Guitar logos on it, and hopefully we get to have a beer in person. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.